All right, so we ended the last one talking about resource partitioning or niche partitioning. So let's say that we have this tree, and there's a green bug that can live all over any part of this tree, okay? And then a red bug moves in, and the red bug says, but I want to eat off the tree. And the green bug says, no. But when they compete, there isn't a clear winner. Sometimes the red wins, sometimes the green wins. And so they know that this competition is going to be something that's going to continue happening, and that's going to be energy wasting. So they don't want to do that because they don't want to waste energy, because things that waste energy die. So what happens is they come to this mutual agreement. Now, that, as I mentioned in the last Nearpod video, learning target video, they don't like sit down and talk about it. They don't make a conscious decision. They don't shake hands. They just kind of move away from each other, and in doing that, they limit their range. And so now the green bugs have partitioned or walled off part of their niche or their resources, so they're only using a part. And so when we talk about the niche for this green bug or the red bug, because they probably could both use the whole tree, the green bug's fundamental niche is the whole tree, okay? But that's not reality. That's not what the green bug is doing, because that brings in some competition. So what it's actually doing is it's hanging out in the top part of the tree. And sorry, I'm hoping I'm not going to make you motion sickness. Motion, that's not, anyway, you know what I meant. By turning the paper. What we see now is they're only using a part of their niche. That's their realized niche. It's what's real to them. It's their reality. And so that's resource or niche partitioning, and how it leads to taking your fundamental niche and narrowing it down or shrinking it down to your realized niche. And the goal of that is to reduce competition so that you don't waste that energy. I can compare these. Organisms can live in them. They both can exist in a realized or fundamental niche, and contrasting them is size, basically. Fundamental niche is bigger, but it has competition. Realized niche is smaller, but it decreases competition. I can describe the features of a stable community. Stable communities have stable communities are diverse communities, okay? And when we talk about diversity, we talk about the number of organisms, or the number of different, let's go with that, number of different organisms. So we have, in the forest, we have raccoons and rabbits and foxes and deer and snails and mushrooms and pine trees and oak trees, and okay, different organisms. But also the population sizes. If I just have 3 of each, it's not a very diverse ecosystem. I need large population sizes of lots of different organisms for it to be considered truly highly diverse. And that's going to make the ecosystem more stable. I can quantify the level of diversity. Quantify, that means math. The level of diversity in an ecosystem. And so what we see here is we have 2 communities. I'm going to do this kind of quickly, but not too quick. Here's the formula. Don't need to memorize it. It's on the formula sheet, where N is population size of one species, and big N is the total population. Okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to say 1 minus, and this means the sum of. So what we're going to do is we're going to take each one of these, divide them by the total, square it, and then add those together. So first I need to figure out my total. Plus 24 plus 53 plus 0 is 211. Okay. And then my total for this one, 1532 plus 342 plus 12 plus 1022 is 2908. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 134 divided by 211 squared plus 24 divided by 211 squared plus 53 divided by 211 squared plus 0. And you don't even need to worry about that 0. Sorry, I forget y'all can't see necessarily the bottom. And so that is how you're going to set that up. 134 divided by 211 squared is 0.4. 24 divided by 211 squared is 0.01. And 53 divided by 211 squared is 0.06. Okay, and so those added together, 0.4, well, this is going to be 7, so 0.47. Okay, if you don't trust me, add it up on the calculator, but pretty sure I'm right. And that's going to give me a Simpson's diversity index of 0.53. Don't forget to subtract it from that 1. That's a mistake that some students forget. They're like, oh, it's 0.47 because they did the math, and you feel like you're done with the math because you did the hard part, but that's not the end of the math. Okay, for the second one, 1 minus 1532 over 2908 squared plus 342 over 2908 squared plus 12 over 2908 squared, that's probably not going to be a very big number, plus 1022 over 2908 squared. Okay, so 1532 divided by 2908 squared is 0.28 plus 342 divided by 2908 squared is 0.01. 12, we're probably going to go out to three decimals for this one. Ooh, no, we're going to go out even more than that. Let me make sure I did that right, but I think I did. 2908 squared, yep. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a 2. So that's pretty much 0. We're going to probably round that out at some point. And 2908 squared is 0.12. Whoops. All right, 0.28 plus 0.01 plus 0.0002 plus 0.112 is 4102, which we're probably just going to round to 41. And so that is going to give me 0.5898 or 0.59. Okay, so now that I know the Simpson's diversity index for both groups, I don't know if you can see that under my face. There you go, if you want to pause it and double check. Of 0.53 and 0.59, and that's quantifying it. That's given us a number that tells us how diverse it is. It's always going to be a number between 0 and 1. And so the one with the highest number is the most diverse. And so our community number 2 in this case is the most diverse. And so I can quantify the level of diversity. That's coming up with these numbers here. And then I can compare communities to determine which is more diverse. That's where you're going to compare these two numbers and say the higher is the more diverse. So that's going to be the more stable. That could be another question they could ask you. They could say, they could give you these numbers and say, which community is more stable? And so you have to think, okay, stability is based off of diversity. How do I figure out diversity? Well, I do Simpson's diversity index. This one's the more diverse, therefore it's the more stable. I can explain the importance of a keystone species. Keystone species are species that are so important that when they are removed from their ecosystem, the ecosystem is in danger of collapsing. And so we talked about these at the very end. Here they go. And so one of the examples we saw with this was the sea otter. And so kelp is a producer. It's an algae. It is eaten by sea urchins, which are eaten by sea otters. Well, sea otters were killed for their pelts, their skins. And let's do that so you can see their sweet little faces right there. Oh, so precious. Anyway, they're killed for their skins. So when you took sea otters out of the equation, sea urchins now didn't have predators or didn't have as many because the sea otter population dropped significantly. So these went really high and they started eating up all the kelp. Well, that's not good because that other organisms rely on the kelp too. Once they realized what was going on, they being some humans, they realized what was going on. They banned the killing of otters for a while. Now it's probably, I would imagine it's like deer. I don't know. Maybe you can't kill them at all still. I don't know. But if you can, I'm sure there's a limit. But anyway, when the sea otters started to bounce back, their population grew. They started eating more sea urchins. So there were fewer sea urchins. So there were less sea urchins eating the kelp. And so the kelp was able to kind of bounce back. And so by removing the sea otters, if we'd removed them completely, that whole ecosystem would have fallen apart because the kelp would have been gone, and the kelp is the producer, the base of the food chain in that ecosystem, and so none of the other organisms that depend on that kelp could have survived. So that's what a keystone species is. Remember, a keystone is that one stone in an arch that holds it all together, most important stone in the arch, and that's why it's called a keystone species. The next one, I can define an invasive species. An invasive species is any species that becomes established outside of its native range. Now, if I take a plant to a South Carolina plant like a pansy, and I take it to the Sahara Desert and I plant it and it dies, that's not an invasive species because it did not become established. Invasive species are those that are introduced to a new area outside of their native range, and they become established, and they're able to survive and reproduce. Because they don't generally have natural predators or competitors in that scenario, typically they go through exponential growth. So you see tons of this organism start to evolve, or not evolve, but start to survive and reproduce and make more of those. We see this with kudzu. We've seen it with the zebra mussels. There's a lot of other examples as well. But what's negative about them is because they don't have a predator and because they go through exponential growth and because they kind of take over the ecosystem, a lot of times they will outcompete the native species, and then the native species dies out, and so therefore you have less diversity, and that makes the ecosystem less stable. And so that's the detrimental effect of an invasive species. And that is diversity and Simpson's diversity index. It's not standard diversity index, Simpson's diversity index calculations. So if you have any questions about any of that, let me know, and I'll be happy to go over it with you. Thanks, guys.